I'm Dr. Lena Popovic, and after 30 plus years in medical practice, I realised there's a lot missing from modern medicine. Education is more powerful than medication, and our decisions have more impact than our DNA. Today's brain booster is Yearn to learn. In April this year, that's 2026, I had the incredibly good fortune to experience birdwatching for the very first time while I was canoeing through Everglades National Park in Florida, USA. And accompanied by a very knowledgeable guide, I soon discovered that birdwatching, also known as birding, involves a whole lot more than just watching birds. In the case of the Everglades, now I'm testing my memory, herons, egrets, ibises, ospreys, and my absolute favourites, roseate spoonbills. They're the ones that I can remember. That they were just gorgeous birds. Anyway, and meticulously observing, identifying and studying wild birds in their natural habitat takes a lot more focus, concentration, attention to detail, presence, multi-sensory stimulation, and even memory than I'd ever imagined. I'd actually never thought about it. But bird watchers don't just look at physical traits, colour and shape of feathers, beak contours, tail lengths. They don't just use those physical features to identify a species, which is challenging enough, but some birders memorise unique bird songs or the way birds call out to each other or the specific way a bird glides through the air. And they collect the most fascinating bird facts, like the reason that roseate spoonbills have such vibrant pink feathers is because they eat carotenoid-rich shrimp and prawns. And if they don't get enough of these crustaceans in their diet, their feathers fade to a dull white. And as they grow older, these particular birds lose the feathers on the top of their heads and end up completely bald. Who would have thought there was such a thing as a bald bird? And many bird watchers keep a life list of every unique species of bird they have ever seen. That is one labour-intensive hobby, and a labour of love at that. And what I found most surprising of all is that birding is one of the fastest growing outdoor recreational activities in the world. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because just 1 month before my birdwatching expedition, a study published in the March issue of the Journal of Neuroscience revealed that the skills used in birdwatching, namely visual discrimination, sustained attention, and memory recall, reshape our brain and can help protect against cognitive decline. That's not why I did the birdwatching, by the way. I didn't come across the study until after I was back in Australia, but I thought it was a remarkable coincidence, so I had to tell you about it. So in this study, Canadian researchers, led by neuroscientist Eric Wing, wanted to find out whether becoming an expert birder changes the brain. And they were especially interested in whether the years of intense observation, attention, memory and pattern recognition needed for birdwatching, bird identification, might strengthen the brain in ways that help protect it from decline. So they recruited 29 expert birders and 29 novice birders. And participants ranged in age from their 20s to their 70s. And the two groups were carefully matched for age, sex and education. So the researchers could compare their brains without other factors skewing the results. The participants were then asked to complete a bird identification task, while their brain activity was measured by 2 different MRI scans. And they had to identify photographs of local bird species as well as more challenging and non-local bird species. And the task required participants to notice really subtle differences between birds, such as beak shape, wing markings, body proportions, and feather patterns. And that kind of fine visual discrimination is one of the hallmarks of being an expert bird watcher. And the researchers used 2 types of MRI scans to yield 2 different sets of information. The first type of scan is known as diffusion-weighted MRI, or just diffusion MRI. And this scan examines the structure of the brain by measuring how easily water molecules move through brain tissue. Less movement of water, called lower mean diffusivity, or lower MD, suggests the tissue is denser and more structurally complex, which is a good thing. The second type of scan was a functional MRI, fMRI, to see which brain areas became active while participants performed the bird identification task. And what did the brain scans show? There were noticeable differences between the brains of expert and beginner birders. The expert birdwatcher brains showed more compact, structurally complex tissue in areas involved in recognizing intricate objects, focusing attention, visual processing, and working memory. So in practical terms, this means that expert birdwatchers had better concentration, were more skilled at distinguishing fine details, not just in relation to birds. They were faster at processing visual information, and they scored better in tests of memory. And these differences persisted across the lifespan. Young and old birders, both, they all had healthier looking brains than novices of the same age. If you'd asked me a few months ago what I thought about birdwatching, I'd have answered, well, I haven't actually thought about it, but it seems like a lovely, relaxing, sedentary pastime. Having looked at the cutting edge of neuroscience, it turns out that birding is a rigorous, high-intensity mental boot camp. And it doesn't stop there. A 2025 review of birdwatching research found other consistent benefits. Birdwatching reduces stress and anxiety. It enhances people's learning ability. And as also seen with the 2026 study, it improves attention and memory. Even just listening to the song of a bird without seeing the bird has been shown to reduce anxiety and restore attention. Now, why does birdwatching build a better brain? Because of the multiple skills that birdwatching demands. Firstly, it requires intense focus, as I discovered myself, and deep concentration. You're scanning complex environments. You're filtering out distractions. You're locking onto subtle movement. That's not passive attention. It's active, sustained, and effortful attention. Take it from me. And it's very different from what the norm is today, i.e. scrolling on social media, which requires very little conscious attention and which actively degrades our long-term attention span. So in a world where our attention is constantly fragmented, birdwatching is neurological gold. Secondly, you need to pay attention to detail. To identify a bird, you have to notice tiny variations in colour, subtle differences in shape, even just minute behavioural cues. So this trains your brain's pattern recognition systems, which are the same systems we use for learning, problem solving and creativity. Thirdly, if you're a bird watcher, you are constantly exercising your memory. Every bird you identify builds a mental library. You recall previous sightings, you compare features, and you upgrade your knowledge. Fourthly, birdwatching provides excellent sensory integration. What I mean by that is it combines information coming in through your eyes and ears with spatial awareness. And this multisensory engagement strengthens connections across different brain regions. Number 5, and this is a really powerful one and really necessary one in our multi-stimulated, distracted world. When you're birdwatching, you're fully present. You're not thinking about anything else, and you're practicing mindfulness without even realizing it. 6, you get all the benefits of being in nature, some of which I discussed in my gut podcasts, and which will be the subject of another podcast episode in future. And finally, birdwatching is never done. There's always a new species, always a new environment, a new level of mastery to reach. So the reason birdwatching is a brilliant brain booster is because it combines multiple brain-enhancing ingredients into one activity. Does this mean you need to add birdwatching to your ever-growing list of brain-boosting activities? You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And if you do want to, you don't have to travel to exotic regions of the world, but you can if you want to. Birdwatching can be done anywhere, from a kitchen window to a remote tropical rainforest. A lot of people enjoy backyard birding. They set up a feeder or bird bath in their garden or on a balcony, and they just observe their local birds. Or you can engage in what's known as patch birding. That means visiting your local parks or nature reserves and monitoring how bird life changes through the seasons. And the brain benefits don't just come from finding rare birds. They come from carefully observing even familiar ones. It's the sustained attention, the curiosity, the pattern recognition. That's what exercises your brain. Simply spending 5 minutes watching a superb fairy wren in your local park, it can become a brain workout. Your eyes track its rapid movements. Your attention stays focused. Your brain compares subtle colours and markings. Your memory recalls where it disappeared into the shrubs. And before you know it, you've been practicing mental skills that help keep your brain healthy. But the biggest takeaway from this research isn't that birdwatching boosts your brain, which it clearly does, but that birdwatching reveals the formula for building a better brain. And the moral of this story, or this study, is to find your personal equivalent of birdwatching, an immersive, challenging, mentally stimulating passion that prompts you to develop a range of complex skills. If looking through a pair of binoculars at a willy wagtail, that's a small Australian black and white bird with a constantly wagging tail, if that doesn't excite you, taking up birdwatching will do nothing to build up your brain. The brain-boosting benefits of birdwatching don't come from birds. The magic comes from the cognitive and emotional mechanics of the hobby. Your brain expands in response to feeling curious, challenged, and excited at mastering a new skill. What your brain craves is an activity that forces you into a state of intense focus and enthusiastic exploration. So to find your equivalent of birdwatching, look for something that fulfills the following 3 criteria. Firstly, it's something you genuinely love doing. It brings you joy. It keeps you intrinsically motivated. It makes you lose track of time. It's something you want to do for the pleasure of doing it, not because of any secondary gain, even though you are receiving secondary gains. Secondly, it needs to require effort. It pushes you to learn new rules, acquire new skills, and continuously stretch your abilities. And thirdly, it takes you to new environments, whether that's a natural wilderness, an archaeological or historical site, art galleries, museums, mathematical landscapes, or a creative project. Think about the intense focus, the attention to detail, and the relentless curiosity a devoted gardener applies to their soil and their plants. Think about a musician memorising complex sheet music and refining their motor skills. Think about the puzzle solving required by a genealogist, tracing family trees across centuries, or the exploration involved in someone learning to code, master a new language, or navigate the intricacies of astronomy. These are the activities that leave a positive, restorative imprint on our brain. They prevent our neural circuits from going dormant. So, how do you find your equivalent of birdwatching? Start with self-reflection. Ask yourself what you naturally gravitate toward when you have free time. What holds your attention for hours without feeling like a chore? Is it working with your hands? Is it exploring nature, hiking, rock climbing? Is it deep historical research? Is it photography, painting, pottery, quilting, mastering a complex board game? Doesn't matter what it is, as long as you want to do it and you pursue it with passion and intention. Get excited at the prospect of improving at it. You don't have to become the world's leading expert overnight. Start as a novice, embrace the learning curve, and allow yourself to be captivated by the details. And let your brain relish the adventure of it. One more thing this research made me reflect on is that modern life is actually dragging us into doing the opposite of birdwatching. As I mentioned before, we're scrolling rather than focusing, skimming rather than carefully observing, distracted instead of present, and passively consuming instead of keenly creating. And these behaviours fragment our attention, weaken our memory, and reduce cognitive resilience. Cognitive resilience being the brain's ability to adapt, maintain function, and avoid cognitive decline in the face of stress, ageing, or neurological diseases like dementia. In fact, people's average sustained attention span is shrinking dramatically. Researchers, most notably Dr. Gloria Mark from the University of California, found that over the last 2 decades, the average time people spend focusing on a single task on their screens has dropped from 2.5 minutes to roughly 40 seconds. That's scary. So the broader implication is that it isn't just about finding a hobby that will rescue your brain. It's about designing your life to be filled with curiosity, exploration, challenge, learning, presence. These things don't just create a meaningful life. They sustain a brain-healthy life. Today's health headline is, your brain has the power to heal, recover, and improve. Whether you've had a concussion, traumatic brain injury, or stroke, whether you're experiencing brain fog in menopause, whether you have ADHD or Parkinson's disease or memory problems for any number of reasons, your brain has the power to heal, recover, and improve. Let me backtrack for a minute. For a while now, I've been thinking, I go to the gym to work out different parts of my body, arms, legs, back, chest, to improve my endurance, strength, flexibility, and balance. Wouldn't it be great if there were an equivalent for working out different parts of our brain? The regions responsible for focus, memory, creativity, processing speed, learning, sensory perception, emotion regulation. You get the idea. And then I found it. A dedicated brain gym in Fort Lauderdale, Florida called Focus Brain Therapy, established by Dr. Lisa Husabo. And wait for this. Focus Brain Therapy offers a brain circuit training program analogous to a physical circuit training program that fosters a broad range of brain skills, including those developed through birdwatching and more, to not only help people's brains perform at their peak, but also to treat people who have the conditions I just listed: concussion, traumatic brain injury, stroke, ADHD, Parkinson's, early dementia, brain fog in menopause, or memory concerns. And while I was in Florida, between birdwatching and speaking events, I did a session at Focus Brain Therapy, and it was fantastic. Not only was it really challenging, I could feel my brain getting a workout. It was really fun. I certainly laughed more than I've ever laughed at the gym. And if I lived in Fort Lauderdale, I would definitely be signing up for the program. Because in just 30 visits, brain performance dramatically improves in multiple domains: focus, mental clarity, processing speed, and sharpness of thinking. And the gains can last for 9 to 12 months. And Focus Brain Therapy is where today's health headline comes from. The homepage of their website powerfully states that your brain has the power to heal, recover, and improve, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Now, I'm sharing this not for you to get on a plane and fly to Florida to do the program, because you can do the 30 sessions in just 3 weeks, 2 sessions a day for 5 days a week, and then you're done for a year. Wouldn't that be the best annual holiday? A brain-boosting break in Florida. It doesn't get much better than that. Because if you've ever been to Fort Lauderdale, it's the Gold Coast of the US. They call it the Venice of the US, but apart from the canals, it's nothing like Venice. With its beaches, palm trees, resorts, surfing and cafe culture. It's much more like the Gold Coast. It feels like home to me anyway. So if you have the time and resources to fly to Florida and do the Focus Brain Therapy Cognitive Circuit Training Program, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. But if at this point in time it's not a feasible option for you, you can do your own version of a brain circuit training program in the comfort of your home. Your brain is a bundle of untapped potential. Your brain holds a treasure trove of possibilities waiting to be unlocked. And there's the rub. Those possibilities need to be unlocked. Your brain is your most valuable, powerful, and vital asset. But it requires lifelong maintenance, targeted training, and continual improvement to function optimally. And yet it's just not something we tend to think about doing. Most people take their brain for granted and leave the health and functioning of their brain to chance. Case in point, I'm just back from Canada, where you might know that ice hockey became the national sport in the late 1890s. And they soon realised it was a very dangerous sport. So they immediately created what are known as ice hockey cups, which male players strap around their waist to protect the crown jewels from flying pucks. That's what they call the disc they shoot around the ice. But here's what astounds me the most. It took them another 100 years to think of wearing a helmet to protect their brains. You can't make this stuff up. The message is, if we don't take proactive steps to maintain and improve our brain, it will decline. Similarly, if we don't take proactive steps to maintain and strengthen our muscles, they will decline. If we don't do any strength training, we lose 5 to 8% of our muscles every decade from our mid-30s onwards. This is known as sarcopenia. And after the age of 60, your rate of muscle wasting, sarcopenia, accelerates even further. And contrary to popular belief, sarcopenia is not an inevitable corollary of aging, just as memory loss and cognitive decline are not an inevitable corollary of aging. Both conditions are a consequence of disuse. Use it or lose it, train it and regain it. The concept keeps coming up. And just as our brain retains the ability to adapt, recover and improve, so do our muscles. Muscle loss is completely preventable, and you can continue to build brain and muscle until the day you die. When my father was 78 years old, I bought him his first ever gym membership, and he not only stopped his muscles from wasting, he increased his strength, he increased his muscle mass, and he did that until he passed away in his sleep at the age of 87. And if he can do it, you can do it. I will dedicate another podcast episode to the importance of maintaining our muscles to maintain our brain, because there's a very strong link between our muscles and our brain. You remember the gut-brain connection? Well, there's an equally important muscle-brain connection. Stronger muscles equate to a stronger mind. We don't get weak as we get old. We get old if we allow ourselves to get weak. More on that another day. But I just want to mention a revolutionary study conducted by Harvard researcher Dr. Maria Fiataroni on frail institutionalized nursing home residents aged 86 to 96 who underwent high-intensity resistance training for just 8 weeks. And the results were staggering. Their muscle strength, let me remind you, they were aged between 86 and 96. Their muscle strength increased by an average of 174%. And their physical muscle size, measured in the mid-thigh area, grew by 9%. That means these 86 to 96-year-olds became nearly 3 times stronger, more accurately 2 3/4 times stronger than when they started, in just 2 months. And the way this happens is that resistance training stimulates satellite cells, i.e. muscle stem cells, to fuse with existing muscle fibres, which are damaged in a healthy way during training and then repair and thicken. And Mayo Clinic research confirms that weight training can actively reverse age-related degradation inside muscle tissue samples, even if someone never lifted weights before reaching old age. Isn't that incredible? And to force a 100-year-old muscle to grow, the exercise intensity needs to be high enough to signal to the brain that the muscle is critically needed. And when challenged safely, near their physical limit, centenarian muscles respond by instantly jump-starting protein synthesis and recruiting dominant nerve pathways. And as we approach 100 years of age, building muscle is actually about survival and basic human freedom. It prevents falls, it maintains independence, and it preserves dignity. The functional improvements from even a 5% to 10% increase in muscle mass at that age are life-changing. In the Fiataroni trial, the rapid strength gains allowed many of the participants to completely ditch their assistive devices. They were able to stop using their canes or walkers, and they transitioned back to walking entirely unassisted. It seems like a miracle, but it can be done. Building up the muscles around their hips, knees and ankles improved their balance and gait speed by nearly 50%, which provided an immediate safety net against catastrophic falls and subsequent fractures. And the simple ability to stand up from a low toilet seat or bed entirely by yourself relies on leg strength. So building muscle at age 100 ensures a person can take care of their own basic daily needs without relying on a caregiver. Now, you're no doubt very curious about the specific exercises these 86 to 96-year-olds engaged in. Well, the centenarians didn't lift heavy barbells. Instead, they performed highly controlled, joint-friendly movements using elastic bands or pneumatic resistance machines. Now, pneumatic resistance machines are just gym machines that use compressed air instead of heavy iron plates to create resistance. So instead of pulling a pin to select a stack of heavy weights, you press a plus or minus button to change the air pressure inside a piston. And this keeps the tension smooth and eliminates the risk of dropping weights on your foot. And they also did seated leg extensions and assisted standing squats, which were gradually increased in difficulty as their body adapted. So the human body never loses its capacity to adapt to physical demands. Even though a 100-year-old body has lower muscle building hormone levels and fewer motor neurons than a younger body, the fundamental cellular machinery for muscle growth remains fully operational. The same goes for our brain and its capacity to adapt to cognitive demands, which you know is referred to as neuroplasticity. Through the process of neuroplasticity, our brain actively rewires and adapts to new stimuli. When we challenge our minds with complex hobbies, new languages, or demanding puzzles, not just fun, not just easy games, but challenging ones, we trigger the creation of fresh neural pathways. And daily mental cross-training also builds cognitive reserve. Think of cognitive reserve as a mental safety net. A robust, well-exercised brain can better compensate for aging or neurological damage. And you can turbocharge neuroplasticity and building cognitive reserve through a cognitive circuit training program like that offered at Focus Brain Therapy, or you can incorporate novelty and stepping out of your comfort zone into your day-to-day life. Because a healthy brain requires novelty. A rigid, unchanging routine leads to mental stagnation and pruning of neural pathways. Now, pruning neural pathways, known as synaptic pruning, is the brain's process of eliminating weak, unused, or extra connections between brain cells. Think of it like trimming dead branches off a rose bush or clearing away old apps from a smartphone so the rest of the system can run faster and cleaner. And to do this, our brain has specialised immune cells called microglia that act like tiny vacuum cleaners that physically swallow and dissolve the connections that have been flagged for removal. Now, this is a completely healthy, necessary part of maturing into adulthood. In fact, a massive wave of neural pruning occurs during adolescence. This is the most intense period of brain pruning in human life. Our brain eliminates up to 50% of its synaptic connections between childhood and early adulthood. And while it sounds alarming to lose half of your brain connections, the process is entirely healthy. It's not a sign of damage. It's how we upgrade from a child's brain to an adult's brain. And the reason the adolescent brain prunes so aggressively is because during childhood, our brain behaves like an overenthusiastic builder, creating a massive surplus of neural connections to absorb as much information about the world as possible. So by puberty, our brain is packed with an unorganised, tangled web of pathways. And a brain with a whole lot of disorganised pathways is slow and requires an immense amount of energy to run. Electrical signals get bogged down in the clutter. So the brain applies the use it or lose it principle to scan its entire network. It identifies the pathways that the teenager uses most frequently, like language skills, social cues, or specific hobbies, and it reinforces them. And then it aggressively snips away the unused paths. At the same time, the surviving, frequently used pathways become wrapped in a fatty layer of insulation called myelin. And this process transforms the equivalent of slow dirt roads into a streamlined, highly coordinated superhighway system that allows information to travel across the brain up to 100 times faster than before. So, pruning in adolescence is a good thing. But under certain conditions later in life, pruning can become pathological and highly destructive. Our brain is an extreme economizer of energy. If a neural network sits completely dormant for too long, the brain assumes those pathways are no longer needed and prunes them away. This is known as disuse atrophy. In practical terms, it means that settling for a humdrum status quo erodes our brain and drastically limits our potential. When we stop learning, memorising, socialising, practicing a foreign language, the physical pathways supporting those skills wither away, and it can lead to permanent loss of those cognitive abilities if we don't make a serious effort to regain them. Another cause of unwanted pruning is chronic stress, whether that's a toxic work environment, an unhappy marriage, or severe anxiety, because prolonged, unmanaged stress causes the adrenal glands to flood the body with the hormone cortisol. And high cortisol levels essentially hyperactivate our microglia, which you'll recall are the brain's pruning cells. Instead of neatly trimming weak connections, our microglia go rogue and begin aggressively eating away healthy, vital synapses in the hippocampus, the seat of learning and memory, and the prefrontal cortex, responsible for judgment and emotional control. This physically shrinks those brain regions, and they are also the two regions that suffer the most damage in Alzheimer's. And a third cause of unhealthy pruning is chronic inflammation, which has a similar effect to chronic stress. Chronic inflammation can be due to sleep deprivation, a highly processed diet, abdominal obesity, gum disease, gingivitis, even loneliness. And it leads to inflammatory chemicals crossing the blood-brain barrier and irritating the brain's immune system. So once again, the microglia behave erratically and mistakenly prune away functioning pathways, causing what we experience as brain fog and slowed thinking speeds. The good news, because there always has to be good news, is that you can counteract negative pruning by doing the opposite. By effectively managing stress, improving your sleep, eating real, whole, home-cooked food, getting regular physical exercise, and intentionally striving to improve your cognitive abilities, such as expanding your attention span, learning new skills, or honing critical thinking. When you do these things, you send chemical signals that tell your microglia to stop pruning and start protecting your neural highways. And with enough of the right stimulation, you can increase your neural connectivity, not just preserve it. What do I mean by neural connectivity? It's the opposite of pruning. And it's a critical concept, so I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into it. Neural connectivity refers to the physical and functional communication networks between different cells and different regions in your brain. As an analogy, think of your brain as a massive country, Australia. Think of different regions in your brain as states, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and your individual brain cells, neurons, as suburbs, Mossman, Parramatta, Cronulla. And there are two types of neural connectivity: structural connectivity and functional connectivity. Structural connectivity corresponds to the roads between suburbs and states. It's the physical highway system of your brain. And it consists of the actual cables, called axons, that grow out from one neuron to communicate with another neuron. When you learn a new skill, your brain physically builds brand new biological roads to connect those towns together. Functional connectivity is analogous to the traffic. This is how well the suburbs actually communicate with each other. When you perform a complex task, like playing an instrument or driving a car, multiple different areas of your brain have to fire electrical signals simultaneously. And high functional connectivity means the traffic flows smoothly, quickly, and without delays across the highway system. An example of how we increase our neural connectivity is learning to drive a car. The very first time you get behind the wheel, your brain has to manually think about pressing the accelerator, or gas for my US listeners, checking the mirrors, steering all at once. The roads between these brain regions are narrow dirt paths. Traffic is slow and you feel mentally exhausted. Because when you're starting out, your brain has low structural and low functional neural connectivity in relation to driving. After a few months of practice, driving becomes second nature, because now your brain has paved a high-speed, multi-lane superhighway connecting your visual cortex, your motor skills, and your decision-making centres. The regions now communicate instantly and effortlessly because you've developed high neural connectivity. And having high neural connectivity across different skills matters, because as we age, some individual brain cells naturally die off, which can cause a roadblock in a specific neural pathway. But if you have high overall neural connectivity, your brain is highly adaptable. If you've built lots of alternative side streets and detours over your lifetime, through learning and challenge, the electrical signals can simply take a different route. This is why continuing to make more and more connections between different regions of our brain actively prevents memory loss and cognitive decline. If you can't retrieve a memory via one pathway, you're able to connect the dots via an alternative pathway. And the Focus Brain Therapy Cognitive Circuit Training Program increases neural connectivity especially powerfully because it stimulates multiple regions of your brain simultaneously. For example, by combining balance, coordination, sharpening your reflexes, and problem solving all in one activity. Another station stimulates your sense of smell while asking you to quickly process visual information and make split-second decisions. But just as you don't have to go to a gym to get physically fit, you can go for a walk or run or swim or cycle or dance or kayak. There are lots of ways to get physically fit. There are also many ways to get mentally and cognitively fit. It's just that in the frantic, furious, fast-paced world we live in, a gym, be it a body gym or a brain gym, is a very time-efficient way of getting an effective workout. So, what are some time-efficient, home-based, brain-boosting exercises you can weave into your day-to-day life? I'll answer that question in What's Missing from Modern Medicine. What's missing from modern medicine is an easily implementable prescription for optimising our brain health on a daily basis. So I'm going to give you a prescription now. Here are the 3 underlying principles. Number 1, seek out novelty. Because novelty forces your neurons to fire in new patterns, which physically changes and strengthens your brain's structure. Routine, in contrast, means your brain is operating on autopilot using existing well-worn neural pathways. No growth. Now, I'm not saying you can't have any routine in your life. Of course, we have to have some, but there has to be some novelty as well. Navigating a novel situation also releases dopamine, which sharpens your focus, enhances memory retention, and boosts overall motivation. Second principle, look for new challenges. Because when we're challenged, we release my favourite chemical messenger, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which you'll remember is a protein that acts like a fertiliser for our brain. It supports the survival of existing neurons and encourages the growth of new ones. And 3, consistently push your boundaries, because this builds a denser network of neural connections, which acts as a buffer against cognitive decline. And here are some brain-boosting activities you can really easily incorporate into your life. And not only will they boost your brain, doing these things will give you a sense of real satisfaction and accomplishment and better equip you to handle bigger challenges that life throws your way. Okay, firstly, take your routine activities and tweak them a bit. Do them a little differently to usual so you're not running around on autopilot. And you briefly have to stop to think about what you're doing. I call this deliberate daily disruptions. And some specific ways you can do this are switch hands, brush your teeth, navigate your phone, or use your mouse with your non-dominant hand to force the opposite hemisphere of your brain to work. When I first did this, I found that even just turning a door handle or holding a cup of tea with my non-dominant hand gave me pause for thought. And when I'm on a plane waiting for it to take off and I'm not allowed to use my laptop, it's a rule, you can't use a large device until after takeoff, I pull out a piece of paper and practice writing with my non-dominant hand. Another deliberate daily disruptor is to take a completely new route to work, or the grocery store, or a friend's home, without using a GPS to sharpen your spatial awareness and your navigation skills. A third deliberate daily disruptor is to rearrange your environment. Change the layout of your desk, your kitchen drawers, or your phone apps to break, automatic muscle memory. And a fourth daily disruptor is to button your shirt or zip your jacket using only one hand to disrupt deeply ingrained muscle memory. Another way to boost your brain is to learn skills that simultaneously challenge your motor control and your mental processing speed. For example, juggling. Neuroimaging reveals that juggling dramatically increases neural connectivity in the parietal lobe of the brain, which manages spatial awareness and motion tracking. Practical knot tying, like macrame or survival knots. This forces your brain to engage in complex spatial manipulation and sequencing, and it improves your fine motor skills and your procedural memory. So buy a length of paracord, short for parachute cord, and learn 3 foundational knots via free video tutorials, like you might learn the bowline, the square knot, and the clove hitch. And a third way to boost your brain is to challenge your own opinions and to stretch your thinking. Find a new word in the dictionary at the start of each week and then use it in a conversation as often as you can over the next 7 days, even if it's just talking to yourself. Spend 15 minutes a day reading about a complex topic you know absolutely nothing about. For example, astrophysics, archaeology, plumbing. Watch a movie in a foreign language with subtitles, or listen to a genre of music you typically dislike to challenge your auditory processing. Read a well-reasoned article from a political or philosophical viewpoint that directly opposes your own to flex your critical thinking muscles. Or even better still, think of an opinion you hold strongly and then spend 60 seconds arguing the exact opposite side out loud. Practice mental arithmetic. Next time you have a meal in a cafe or restaurant, add up the bill in your head. Memorise your shopping list. You can take it with you as a backup, but see if you can find ways to remember it. And speak to strangers. Initiate a brief, friendly conversation with a barista, cashier, or coworker you've never spoken to before. And if you're really time poor, here's a way you can do a lot of brain boosters in one hit. Here we go. Drive to your grocery store via a new route. Listen to music you're not in the habit of listening to as you drive. Do your shopping from your memorised list. Use your non-dominant hand to put everything in your trolley. Strike up a conversation with a stranger in the laundry aisle, or your aisle of choice, or while you're in the queue waiting to pay for your groceries. Add up the price of your groceries in your head and retrace the new route you took to get back home. That's quite a brain workout. Today's weather report fits perfectly with what we've been discussing today, and it's probably the question I am asked more often than any other.
Can you tell me whether doing crosswords and Sudoku helps to keep my brain sharp and lowers my risk of dementia?
Whether crosswords and Sudoku boost your brain depends entirely on your current skill level. If you're already expert at them, they do not build significant new neural connectivity. But if you find them genuinely difficult, they will help create new neural pathways. Remember that your brain operates under the law of novelty and strict economy of energy. It only builds new neural pathways when it is forced to adapt to a brand new uncomfortable challenge. So when you first learn Sudoku, your brain works hard. However, once you master the patterns and strategies, your brain automates the process. So doing a Sudoku puzzle becomes an act of retrieval, not learning. Your brain drops into autopilot using existing well-worn pathways rather than building new ones. There's also what's known as the domain-specific limitation. Solving puzzles makes you excellent at solving puzzles. Brain imaging studies show that unfortunately, the cognitive gains from doing 10,000 crossword puzzles don't transfer over to other real-world skills, like remembering where you parked your car or learning a new software. So if you sit down with a crossword or Sudoku puzzle and find it highly frustrating, confusing and difficult, this is the sweet spot for brain growth. This is known as the beginner's advantage. If you experience something as really difficult, it means your brain doesn't have an existing automated pathway to handle the problem. It's forced to recruit multiple brain regions simultaneously. So your visual cortex, working memory, and executive planning centres have to talk to each other to work out how to tackle the situation. The mental strain and effort of tackling a difficult puzzle also trigger the release of, you guessed it, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and coat those active pathways in protective don't eat me tags, physically paving new neural pathways. That means struggling through a difficult cognitive task builds structural density in the brain, which acts as a protective buffer against cognitive decline. So if you want to use puzzles to continuously boost your neural connectivity, you need to follow the principle of progressive overload. Firstly, the minute a medium level Sudoku feels comfortable, you have to immediately jump to hard or expert levels to keep your brain off autopilot. Secondly, change the nature of the challenge. Try completing a crossword puzzle with a strict 5-minute timer, or solve a Sudoku puzzle entirely in your head without writing down any placeholder numbers. That's really hard. And thirdly, cross-train your brain. Once you feel highly competent at logic-based math puzzles like Sudoku, completely switch mediums to language-based puzzles like crosswords or Wordle, or a spatial, tactical game like chess. Thank you so much for listening and for sending me your weather questions. I will get to them all in due course. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode, and I look forward to sharing with you another brain booster, health headline, missing medical marvel and weather report next week. Please note that this podcast is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice and is not intended to provide specific guidance for any particular situation. The use of this information is at the viewer and listener's own risk and is not a substitute for consulting a healthcare provider.